Wow. Hi everyone, welcome at the Studio Migraine podcast. My name is Ellen and I am your host of the podcast. I am suffering from chronic migraines, and one day, while being stuck with a terrible migraine attack, I was done suffering. And at that very moment, I decided to become my own migraine leader and also someone who helps other women to live our lives despite the stupid migraines. And this will be our first podcast in English. And today we have with us a very special guest, Linda. Or do I have to say the Mindful Migraine blogger? She is a true inspiration to all of us, and she has gained worldwide attention with her daily blog on migraines. Really, Linda, knowing that you are out there and seeing your blogs with such a variety of topics and a fair discussion makes me realize that we are not alone. And also that it really doesn't matter where we are living, right? Because I live in the Netherlands and you live in Sydney, which is a 10 hours time difference, right? So for you it's morning and for me it's late in the evening. But here we are, and it's really nice that we start bonding. And I think it started with LinkedIn. We kind of met there. Yeah.
It did. I think it's one of the great things about the digital side of things is that it doesn't matter, as you said, you can be on opposite sides of the world. And as long as you can get a little window of the times to overlap, then you can build up a friendship. That's all it takes.
Yes. It's all it takes. And what it's taking is this stupid migraine, because you are also a migraine sufferer, or how do you say that in English without calling it someone who's suffering a lot? But
we say a person with migraine.
Yeah, yes. You are also a person with migraine, and we share experiences and we talk about it a lot. But before we dive deeper into migraine, I would like to ask a question about Sydney. So
Sure.
One day, I think I will come over to visit you, to see you in person and to drink coffee or tea. And
Yep.
What kind of sightseeing will we be doing then?
So I'm in Sydney, Australia, so we would definitely go down to the beach. But of course, we'd have to have a big hat and lots of sunglasses and cream and try and keep that rotten old sun out of our face. And then I would probably take you over to the Sydney Opera House just so that you could enjoy the sails of the building.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Well, I'm looking forward, and I do think that at one day, for sure, we will meet. And then I was thinking, if you would come over to the Netherlands, what would I show you? Well, I live in The Hague, and we also have very nice beaches. So I think I would definitely take you over to the beach as well. And I think I would go with you to the Rijksmuseum to see all the Dutch painters and everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would love that. And it's, I think, one of the things I've joked about it with you before is this idea of having a bit of a dream. So at the moment, for me, traveling is not really an option because I do live with chronic migraine. So on some level of pain every single day. But the idea of having someone to go and visit and a reason to get out of bed and a reason to heal has been really, really helpful. So before we go any further, I just want to do a massive shout out to you, that you make a huge difference to me and my life. And knowing that, like you said, there's somebody else out there who's making a difference, who's pushing themselves each day to get through the pain, it makes a huge difference. So I 1000% hope that you're either sitting with me on a beach or I'm sitting with you on a beach.
Great.
Because it's keeping me going.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's really for me the same. I mean, it sounds weird, but every day when I open LinkedIn, then I see your blog. It's on a different topic. So I know that you are there. And the topics you describe, then I'm like, I do recognize this. Or how is he doing this with this migraine? Because I was wondering, and it's also for the other people who listen to this podcast, what does a typical day look like for you? Because you said that you are in pain every day, but can you describe from morning till evening what it looks like?
For me, I wake up in the morning, and in the past, I had migraines. My first migraine was when I was 11, but I didn't have very many in my 20s and 30s. By the time I was in my 40s, they were coming every month. They were definitely hormonal. But by the time I was 50, they started to merge and blend. And then what happened was I have this pain in my eye that used to be my trigger sort of sign that it was coming. So my eyebrow
Mm-hmm.
would start to hurt or my eye would hurt, and that would tell me, uh-oh, migraine's coming, better get to bed, take some medicine. For some reason, 2.5 years ago, that pain didn't turn off. It just sits there all the time as if someone's got their thumb pressed against my eyeball.
Mm-hmm.
So my typical day, I wake up in the morning, I feel that pain, I say, okay, it's there, but I've got to keep going. So you get up, and then my day is just a juggle like every other mum in the world. I've got to get kids to school, I've got to feed the dogs, I've got to walk the dogs, I've got to vacuum the lounge room. But the difference is I have to remind myself every now and then to stop the juggle, put the balls
Mm-hmm.
down, stop. Sometimes that might be a cup of tea. Sometimes that might be a meditation. Sometimes I actually have to go and lie down in bed. And so I do what everyone else does, shuffle, juggle, hustle, but with lots and lots of regular breaks. And
Yeah, of
then
course.
I get through to the end of the day. By the time dinner's finished, I'm pretty much exhausted. I fitted in my 2 hours of blogging somewhere and researching about migraine. I'm currently doing a PhD, so I've done three or 4 hours of that. But yeah, by 9 o'clock, I'm done and dusted. I've done a full
Yeah, of
day, and my
course.
body's asking me to stop, and I just have to respect and honor what the signals that it's sending me. And so usually now with 2 teenage girls and a husband, I'm the first to bed, and everyone else is still awake watching TV. So, but it's learning not to fight that, I guess. I used to feel a little bit ashamed that I was giving up or that I should do more. Now I just
Mm-hmm.
accept the fact that I've done a really good day's job, and my body deserves the rest that it needs.
Yeah, yeah, I can also imagine that it's quite difficult to pretend all day long that you are
Yep.
doing fine, and you have all these things that you have to do. You have to be a nice mom, you have to work on your PhD, you're blogging,
Yep.
right? And you're doing
Yeah.
groceries, you're doing all these kind of things. And I can imagine that it must be tough to pretend that it's all going well while you are having this pain in your eye and you're probably very tired. And that must be exhausting as well, I can imagine.
It is. And I think, though, the blog, if you can find a passion project, something that really sets you alight and gives you some extra energy, it gives
Mm-hmm.
you a reason to get out of bed. And what happens, and it might, for everyone, it's different. It can be reading a good book, it could be knitting a scarf, it could be walking through nature.
Yeah.
If you can find something that distracts you from the pain so that you just forget for a little while that it's even there, then
Yeah.
what happens is the migraine pain doesn't go away, but your relationship does. Your
Okay.
relationship to it does, and the suffering gets less. You stop suffering from the pain.
Okay. Well, that sounds very interesting. And let's talk about that later also in more detail, because what I think is also interesting is that a couple hours of the day you're blogging. So then you have this positive energy. And I also
Yep.
heard you explaining that you stopped fighting. So you stopped
Yes.
fighting this pain and you stopped fighting your fate that you're not kind of normal and you have to deal with it, right?
Yes.
And
Yep.
I was also wondering if your migraines have evolved over time. So maybe you said you were 11 when your first migraine started.
Yes.
So, and now you are 50
50 something.
50 something. Yes. And you also said something about hormones. So can you explain a bit how migraines have changed over time?
Sure. So those early migraines in my 20s and 30s were usually tied to significant triggers. So I would go to a movie and there would be flashing lights, or I would go to somebody's wedding and there'd be that long gap between the ceremony and the reception, and you didn't realize, but you'd gone 2-3 hours without drinking water or eating, for example, while you're waiting around. So I would often be able to look back and say, oh, that's what gave me my migraine. But then in my 40s, it was every month, and I could know that my period was about to start because my migraine would start. And at the time, the doctors were just saying, well, that's just one of the normal triggers. There's not a lot you can do about it. And I
Mm-hmm.
accepted that. Again, as you mentioned, it's just your fate kind of thing. But then I think what happened, and what the doctors think happened, is that with perimenopause, your hormones start to fluctuate in a way that's sort of similar to puberty. There's this messy time where instead
Mm-hmm.
of your periods coming every 4 weeks, they're just doing their own thing. And that sort of randomness brought the migraine peaks and troughs closer together, and your body starts to be affected by those hormones in a
Okay.
new way.
And Linda, so the frequency got up, but
Yep.
did you also experience that the migraine, the pain got more intense, or that one attack took, instead of 1 day, for example, 3 days, or did you see
So actually
differences there?
the reverse
Reverse.
happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, so in my 30s, they would be very intense, like and 40s, very intense. They would last the full 3 days. I would be unable to get out of bed. But then in the gaps in between, no pain whatsoever. Life would go back
Mm-hmm.
to normal. But
Yeah.
in these so my worst ever migraine, I was like clenching my teeth so bad I broke teeth. It was that painful.
Oof.
So super intense. Back trips to the hospital, that sort of thing. But in this last 2.5 years, it's been different. The pain level has been constant, but it's much lower. So the severity of the migraines has dipped down, but they're just
Mm-hmm.
more frequent. So
Yeah.
sometimes, I can't believe I'm saying this,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes I would like to go back to that old migraine me where I did suffer, but I only suffered for 3 days, and then the other 27 days were fine. There's something
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more depressing about this sort of low level
Yeah.
constant pain that there's no escape from. But when I say that, I also don't want to go back to that severity. There is another part of me that is grateful that this is just low level pain. So
Yeah. I do
it's,
recognize this, actually, I have to say. I'm not sure if I'm already in menopause because I'm 36, but it could start now. But I also experienced that when I was a child, I had this very intense attacks also with an aura, and
yep,
very intense headache. And I was in bed for 3 days. I had to throw up a lot and everything. I felt really, really miserable. But to me, it never felt that migraine is a chronic disease. It was just these attacks, like you describe. And
yep,
now the pain is not so bad anymore, but I have these frequent aura attacks, sometimes 4 times a week, and it's
yep.
still very annoying. And I remember this having this thought also, like, oh, I wish I could go back to these terrible migraine attacks once in a
It's
while,
it's yeah,
and then
it's
yeah,
unbelievable that you would ever say that, because
yes,
when you lived like that, it was a nightmare. But it's just, I think it's a real wake up call to everybody. Your migraine is completely unique, and it might change over your life too. So
hmm,
those really bad ones that I had, I used to have the hemiplegic, where you feel like you've had a stroke down one side of your body. Touch wood, I haven't had that for 2.5 years. So I haven't had an attack like that. So
hmm,
it's it's important, if you're listening, to remember that your migraines won't be the same forever. So if they're bad or they're good, it could change, and keep in contact with your doctor, keep reviewing your medications, keep reviewing your lifestyle. It is an evolving thing, which makes sense because we're growing,
yeah,
we're changing, we're always
yeah,
transforming. So why wouldn't our migraines as well?
yeah. Yeah, and I also heard you talking about hormones, and they're changing, of course, during our lives as well. And I was talking to a neurologist 2 podcasts back, and he explained to me that it's actually kind of programmed in our head. This the migraine software is kind
Yep.
of programmed, and also it's getting worse during perimenopause. And he said that's also something you can nothing do about. I mean, it's just there, and it will happen, right? And
Yes.
I recall you saying that these hormones are, or perimenopause, is the evil sister of puberty.
It is like that. And it's made so much worse because I have two teenagers at home, two girls.
Oh,
So my
yeah.
poor husband has the both evil twin stepsisters in the house. But the important thing, I guess I'm stumbling on my words because I'm trying to think of the right way of saying it, is even though it's not great, it is normal. This is what it is to be a woman, where our
Yeah.
bodies are changing. The flip it over and say, wow, I created two human beings. Like, I grew two babies inside me. That is what the hormones gave me the ability to do. So even though it's incredibly frustrating and to have your migraines tied to hormones, they are still your superpower in other ways. So you have to
Yeah.
own the good and the bad. But for me, I have now started hormone replacement therapy, is what we call it
Hmm.
in Australia, and taking estrogen and progesterone, and it has again calmed things down a little bit as well.
Hmm.
So don't panic, don't give up. There are options, there are ways
Yeah.
to improve it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to see a gynecologist to help you through
Yes.
this, because
Yes.
what I learned from a gynecologist in the podcast as well is that it can be different situations for all of us. So it really depends on, are you in perimenopause or menopause, or um, there are really things that matter, whether you should have specific hormonal replacement therapy or not. So really see a gynecologist specialized in migraine. That would be best.
Yes, and
And
recognize that everyone's different too. So if you've
yeah,
got histories of breast cancer and things like that in the family, there will be some treatments that you can't have, for example. So
yeah,
it is, that is the other part that is hard, is that there is no one size fits all solution. We're all unique, and it means that the solutions are going to be unique as well. And it
yeah,
can take time to find, but just keep plugging away, keep experimenting, I guess.
yeah. I think that's the most important message to other people living with migraine. Go out there and look what's there for you and what are the options, and
Yes,
read
that's right.
about this
And
migraine.
read
And
about it. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Read it, listen to these podcasts, read the blogs. Don't discount people when they randomly come up to you and start telling you need more magnesium or you should take up yoga. Their advice works for them, so that's good. But remember that it might help you, but it might not. So don't panic if you
yeah,
do yoga and it does nothing for you. It's okay. You're you. So, and
yeah,
but the more you can learn, even if it doesn't help you, the more knowledge you have, the more power you have over your disease. And like you said at the beginning, you weren't a victim anymore, you became a leader. And that's
yeah,
how I see it as well, is that I am my primary healthcare provider. I have to look after me, and I'm the only one that knows me best. I will read a lot, I will talk to doctors, I will take everyone's advice, but ultimately I know what works for me.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I also got this good advice. Don't go to a doctor and say, I have a headache. I have a terrible headache. No, just say, I'm suffering from migraine. What are my options? Or if you already read something about it, then I'm suffering from migraine. I would like to explore these and these options. Please help me out.
Agree.
But
Agree.
don't call it a headache, because it's not.
And
I
and
wish
and
it
don't,
was.
and I've learned as well, don't go in with the blank paper saying, what can you do for me? Because the chances are they will say nothing, and they don't
Mm,
have that experience, or they don't have the time to think about it. As you said, it's better to go in and say, I've been researching it. Am I suitable to take this type of medication? Could I use this? Would it help me? You might still get the answer no, but you've got a better chance of getting the conversation rolling. And so yeah, you really have to just learn as much as you can, people. Keep learning. I know you're
yeah.
tired and I know that you're hurting, but if you want to get out of this situation, you have to roll up your sleeves and do some
Yeah.
homework.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And there are options for every
Yeah.
stage of migraine or during your life. There are options. And
Yep.
of course, unfortunately, not all options are helping us. And it's really, you have to invest and you have to take the time to find the treatment that's best for you. And unfortunately, this may take months or maybe a year or longer. And that's really
Yeah.
frustrating. Yeah.
It is frustrating and it's tiring because we're sick. We're not well. It's not
Yeah.
like we're full of energy and ideas, but what is the alternative? The alternative is you stay in bed. And that's what I did for one whole year. I pretty much
Oh,
slept in bed for a year. I was bedbound, completely out of it, in pain all the time. I just suffered, and that's not life. Like, you can have a migraine and still have a life,
hmm,
but you have to make the choice to get out of bed and start living.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
So,
not easy, but it gets easier the more you do it. You actually
yeah.
can teach your brain, okay, you know
Hmm.
what? I hear you and I know that you're sore and my eye is sore all the time, but I'm not listening to you for the moment because I'm going to do something that interests me more than you do.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. And I do recognize this. I mean, even with chronic migraine, you can still have a life, and you should fight for
Absolutely.
it to do the
Yeah.
things that
And
give you positive energy and actually that make you happy. And don't stop doing all the things that make you happy. Or when you're afraid of activating your triggers, so you stop doing everything. For example, you don't want to go to bed too late.
yep.
So you don't go out for dinner anymore, because then you,
Yes.
oh, if I go out for dinner, then I will be in bed too late, and then I won't sleep well, and if I don't sleep well, I get this migraine, so I never go out for dinner anymore. And that's where you should stop yourself, and you should tell
Yes.
yourself, I love going out to dinner with my friends, so maybe I get a migraine, but maybe it's worth it, or maybe it's
And
not worth it this time, then
exactly.
I will
But
go
you can
another
also modify it, and you can say to your friends, you love me and I'm struggling. So can we just pick a restaurant that's really close to my home so that if it doesn't work out for me, I can run away. But,
yeah.
don't pick something on the opposite side of town that requires me to catch 2 buses and a train to get there, because I'm not going to be able to get home if I feel sick. And they love you. They're going to say yes. They're going to make it easier for you. And if they don't, then okay. Then say, how about we have takeaway at my house? So do a compromise. Find
Yeah.
ways to slowly get back into the vibe of what makes you happy. And again, it's all easy to say. It can be very hard to do. But if you take baby steps, so as I said, invite someone over for a cup of coffee, invite someone over for dinner so that you have a laugh together. Find ways to slowly get back into what was making you happy. It makes a
Mhm.
huge difference.
So, is this kind of the most important lesson you have learned as someone who lives with migraine for quite some time? Or do you have another most important lesson that you would like to share with us?
No, for me, I think the biggest thing was, for a year, I just woke up every day and wished the pain away. I was so focused on pain, less pain, less pain, less pain. That's all I was wishing for. Then one day I woke up and I started to say, I want more joy, more joy, more joy. And that shift made a huge difference. As I said, the migraine didn't go away, but my attitude to life did.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of a sudden, if I was sitting out on the back veranda with the dogs having a cup of tea and the sunshine was on my shoulder, I would really soak up how good life could be and stop worrying about the pain so much and just find ways to bring these happiness into my life. And that just meant, again, this finding reasons to get out of bed in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
finding some friends that understand you. And sometimes, again, it's hard. The people in our life don't suffer from migraine. They don't always understand what it feels like. So if you can find just one person that gets
Mm-hmm.
what you're going through, that can make a difference as well. So my two big things, no, maybe three big things. One is focus on joy, not pain. Try and find ways to bring some happiness into your life. The second is to recognize that you are unique and you have to find your own unique solution. And then the flip side of that is to remember that you're not, even though you're unique, you're not alone. There are a lot of other people going through this. So find a couple of them so that you can relate to them and they can relate to you.
I would like to add something, and that is
Go.
go to the Mindful Migraine blog. Go to your blog, Linda, because you said if you can only find one person who understands you, and then you start to feel better. So I really recommend people to go to your blog, because that's what your blog does to me, and
Okay,
I
okay.
feel
Well, I'm
heard and
super
I feel
proud.
seen with
Okay,
this.
and I think for me, that's why I started the blog, is that I was incredibly lonely, so sad. I just felt like nobody understood what I was going through. I'd been in bed every day for a year. What was the point of getting out of
Mm-hmm.
bed if no one was there to understand it and listen? And then when I started to just write about my life and what was working and what wasn't, and how I did find these small moments of joy, people like you started to respond, and I went, oh wow, I'm not alone. There are other people out there who are struggling and who are not just surviving but thriving with this. And it gives you so much more optimism, so much more hope, because yeah, it is a lonely, horrible diagnosis, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the end of it. There is so much good stuff to be out there enjoying. And so, because I feel the same way about meeting you, is just knowing, and knowing that you're doing your podcast and reaching out to other people, it that gives you an extra level of hope, because there are others like us that have gone
Yeah.
through it and are getting out the other side.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's fair to say that your blog is also your passion project. And at the beginning of
Definitely.
this podcast, you were already recalling that it's really important to have a passion project. And I kind of start to understand what it means to you. And I had this question like, what is it? But I think you explained that already. And what does it mean to you? I think you also explained that really well. It's a way of life, is it? Like,
It is, and it's
yeah.
about it's it's finding that thing that lights you up inside. So it, obviously your family does, obviously your pets do, and your house makes you proud, but this is more than that. This is something about tapping into you as an individual that makes you feel alive and alight. And it will be different for everyone, and it's been different for me over my life. For me, for a long time, it was walking in nature and bushwalking, we call it in Australia, and being out beside the water. It I don't know, I felt like more in touch with the universe, and I felt like a better person just being outdoors. Then it became about being with the children. It can be about being with the dogs. It can be about
Mm-hmm.
planting a seed and watching the plant grow. It's just about something that takes you out of your head, out of your pain, and puts you somewhere else where you're breathing a bit easier, where you're focused on something beyond yourself. And if maybe it's connecting to other people, everyone, again, for me, sometimes connecting with people face to face is a bit overwhelming, whereas on the blog I can write and then I can go and have a lie down. So it's a
Yeah.
conversation that's paced the way I can handle it. So again, everyone's got something that they love to do, and maybe, like you said, with the dinners, you've given up on it because you're scared about the migraine. What I'm saying again is try and find a way of just bit by bit bringing it back into your life, getting that passion back so that you have that joy, that you've got some
Mm-hmm.
hope again. Yeah.
Yeah, and baby steps. That's also what
Yeah,
you
the
said,
baby
right?
steps is
Yeah.
really important. So if you used to be a jogger and now your migraine is keeping you in bed, you're not going to run a marathon tomorrow. You're just not. But you can get out and you can walk to the end of the street, and then maybe you'll walk around the block, and then the next day you can jog to the park. You'll get there. You just have to build it
Mm-hmm.
back slowly. And as you said, I think fear is a big part of that. So if you
Yeah.
can replace the fear with the passion, then you'll be able to counteract the two. Because for me, getting out of bed felt like if I get out, I'm going to get light in my eyes, I'm going to move around too much. There's all these triggers that are going to make things worse. Sometimes that's true, but as you said, sometimes it's not. So take a little bit of a risk. And the more you take those little risks, the more you get the rewards of the happiness. You start to take
Mm-hmm.
bigger and bigger risks.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And one of the lessons that I learned is that everyone can experience pain. Everyone can be in pain. And so many people have chronic diseases. And
Yeah.
it's also up to you. What do you do with this pain? I mean, it's what you said. You can still be outside, drink tea,
Yep.
enjoy the sun a bit as far as you can, right? But
Yep.
um and then you are there with pain, but you are there, right? And I start doing the same. So I always have migraines when I'm on
Yep.
holiday with my family. And then I was looking so much forward to drink my first coffee at the terrace.
Yep.
And the kids, they were just playing around and it was really nice. But then the stupid migraine came. And I
Yep.
was first really sad. I thought, oh, now it's gonna ruin my morning. And I was looking so much forward to just sit here, drink coffee, relax a bit. And then I thought, wait, I can still do that. Of course, I'm in pain. And of
Yep.
course, I'm not feeling well, but I can still sit here. I don't have to go directly to my house to lay in my bed. Of
That's
course, I
right.
will afterwards. But
Yes.
then this switch came that I think there are more people who are doing their things in pain
Yep.
and you don't see it on the outside than people who are always feeling great and can do whatever they want, right?
Yes, absolutely. And this is this thing about just finding a way to turn the volume down. To say in Australia we talk about main character moment. So this idea that you put the brain front and center like it's a celebrity on the stage. And I get it, because that's kind of what a migraine is. It's kind of really all consuming.
Yeah.
But if you can find a way to shut the curtains and go, nope, not today. You can have a dance some other day, but today I want to just have this cup of coffee on the terrace and be in the moment. Find a way to turn the volume down.
Mm-hmm.
It takes practice, but it is possible. And
Yeah.
sometimes, eventually, like you said, it becomes a switch, and you just kind of put it on the
Yeah.
shelf and say, I will have a rest. I know what you're asking me to do. You want me to have a sleep, but I will, but just not yet.
Yeah.
Let me finish my cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Let me sit in the sun for 5 more minutes.
Yeah. And of course, this really depends on how heavy your attack will be, right? And you never know. Sometimes
Obviously,
you're
yeah.
struck by
Again,
lightning and you're kind of game
Completely. And
over
that's what I was
all the
saying
way.
about those ones where I used to be in the movie theater and there was a massive
Yeah,
explosion and flashing lights, and I went, oh, it's coming. And you just know in your stomach and your head and your neck, everything's sending you signals, and you go, right, tap out, I'm done. I've got to
yeah.
go sit in the waiting room and wait for everyone else to finish the movie so I can go home. But there are other ones where you can, and this
Yeah.
is about what mindfulness is for me, is is more about awareness, listening to the whispers that your body is sending you so you can address them and before they start screaming at you. So yes, with migraine, you're going to be unlucky. There are going to be some major attacks you can't control, and hormones will often do that to you as well. You just can't, you
Mm-hmm.
can't always fix that.
Yeah.
But there are other little migraines along the way where it's saying, oh, I'm a little bit
Yeah.
hot. Maybe if you could get out of the sun for me, that would help. And maybe if you could just drink a little bit more water, you could stop this one. And maybe if instead of saying yes to another thing today, you could actually say no and just buy yourself a
Yeah.
bit more time. There are
Yeah.
whispers that our body is trying to send us that we need to listen to.
Yeah, definitely. So I came from a period where I had very bad migraines, and it started to become chronic, from episodic migraines to
Yep.
chronic migraines. And then the intensity of the attacks became less, like I explained before.
Yep.
But still, every attack, every migraine attack, I start crying. And I was
Yeah.
really upset. And then at a certain point, it took me maybe 2 years. Well, I start noticing, but why am I still crying? Why am I so upset while this migraine is not so bad as it used to be anymore? So
Yes.
maybe I can still continue my work or adapt things and or go home early or whatever. But also I had like this, I don't know how to explain it, but this maybe some trauma on
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
stupid migraine attacks, that
Yeah.
every
Oh,
time when it
definitely.
came, I was like, oh, so upset. But now I know, maybe this migraine is not so bad. So whatever, I will take it just as it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that idea of past trauma does come. It starts to rush at you that, oh no, because I have terrible memories of throwing up in public and people judging me, or having to sleep in the boot of somebody's car because we were out at a
Yeah.
party and we couldn't get home. And all of those memories rush at you when you're starting to feel sick. But this is again this thing about turning the volume down, because
Yeah.
migraine is like an alarm system, and if you feed it with fear or frustration or too much focus, it thrives off that. That's that main character moment I was saying. It will step up into the moment. If you're like,
Mm.
oh, woe is me, migraine goes, yes, this is what I was born for, is to ruin people's lives, sort of thing. If you can say, no, I'm not frightened of you anymore, I know we've been through this and I've survived, I'm not going to panic, I'm going to take a deep breath, and like you said, I'm going to try, not push through is not the right word, because sometimes that's more dangerous, but it's,
Mm.
I'm not going to panic, and I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not going to make you the focus, and I'm not going to get too frustrated,
I'm not
because
going to
we're going to
fight
be
you.
okay. Yeah, and I'm not going to fight. I'm not, this is not a battle, because I think one of the tricks with migraine is it is still you. So you can't really fight yourself all the time.
Yeah.
But you can say, I hear you, but I'm not going to respond at the moment. Let's just try and go a little bit further before we panic. And once you get good at that, it does turn that volume down and the pain gets
Hmm.
less.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree. So, Linda, I have two final questions for
Sure.
you before we are almost at the end of this wonderful podcast. So, you start talking about get a passion project, right? And I think this
Yep.
is great advice. But what not to do when starting a passion project? Because I think people living with migraine, I mean, we can be perfectionist. I mean, we want to do things right.
Yes.
Maybe if we're starting a blog, we want to have 1,000 followers tomorrow. Um,
Yep.
and that makes it a bit more difficult, right? So I would like to hear your experiences, and please give us some advice. What
Sure.
not to
Okay.
do when starting a passion project?
So the main thing that you're trying to do is find joy, not add more pressure to your life. So in the same way that you plant a seed and you have to be patient, it's not going to grow overnight. You just have to nurture it. This is something slow. This is something steady. This is something that's going to bring a smile to your face, but it's, you've got to be patient. Like you said, don't start a blog where you've got to have 1,000 visitors tomorrow, or you have to make $100 by the end of the month, or you need to rock up every Wednesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You just can't live that way if you've got migraine. You're just going to give yourself all these deadlines and problems and things that are going to make you feel sick. We don't want that. We just want calm and casual things. And if tomorrow it doesn't work out, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. So just give yourself grace, give yourself space, love yourself enough to say, this is a gift to me. This is not something I have to do. It's something I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't happen today, it'll happen tomorrow. And as you get more enthusiastic about it, as you say, you'll want to do more, you'll want to drive it bigger, you'll want it to happen faster. You won't just plant one seed, you'll start to plant 100 because you're getting so excited by it. That's okay, as long as you give yourself space and time to just enjoy it. If it gets too
Yeah.
much, walk away, because this is not what you need. You don't need tension and stress.
Well, I think that's great advice. And how I would summarize it is find a passion project that in which you will have to invest some time, but it will
Yep.
give you energy.
Yes,
And
fabulous. Yes.
for example, if people ask me like, "Oh, study on migraine, where did you get the time from?" Or "You also have a job. How do you do this? And you have this migraine and a family." And then I say, "Look, I have to invest time, but it gives me a lot of energy, and it really makes me happy to work on study migraine, to find connection with other people who suffer from migraine." And there's this one interesting thing that I found, that since there are many, many women with migraine,
Yep.
they're everywhere. You just have to
Everywhere.
start looking at them, find them.
This is right. So I remember that I used to hate it when people were cutting my hair
Yeah.
and talking to me, because I just wanted to get my hair cut and get out of there so I could go to bed. But one day I asked the lady who was cutting my hair, I just sort of said, "Oh, I've got a migraine." And she said, "So do I." And then all of a sudden, that half an hour haircut was one of the best connections I've
Oh.
had all week. And we started comparing notes about this and that and how we handle things. That is what you kind of need to do, is just reach out and ask some questions, and you will find them everywhere.
Yeah,
We
everywhere.
are everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even directors or people everywhere can suffer from migraines. I once met a director, and we were talking about studio migraine and why I was doing it. And then she said, "Oh yeah, I have migraines too." And I didn't know that at all, because she's hiding it. And then
Yeah.
I asked her, "Why don't you ever talk about it?" And then she said, no, I don't talk about it because I don't want to give people the impression that I'm a woman who's lazy or doesn't want to do specific jobs. I'm like, wow, yeah, there's so
But the
much.
stigma is real,
Yeah,
and a lot
yeah,
of people feel like if they admit it, there's a weakness there, that they're going to make themselves less popular or less appealing as an employee. But that's why what you're doing is important. That's why what I'm doing is important. The more we talk about it, the more we recognize that this is real. We don't
yeah.
need to hide behind, because this pushing through and this pretending not to be in pain is not helping anybody. So
No.
if we were in a wheelchair or had a walking stick, people would seem to understand that we had a little
Yeah.
bit of less ability. But with the migraine, I feel disabled, but nobody knows except my closest family. When they sometimes notice from my
Mm-hmm.
eyes, they say, "Oh, are you having a bad day?" And I say, "Yeah, no, I'm in a lot of pain." They're the only few people that even notice. Everyone else is just impatient with me to hurry up and get through the shopping trolley line sort of thing, and doesn't know how much this is like the biggest thing I've done today is get out of the house.
Yeah,
So yeah, the more we talk about it, the more real it will become, the more people will
yeah,
understand what we're going through.
yeah. That's so important. Yeah, we should all start doing that. I have a final question,
Sure.
and that's about becoming your own migraine leader. What is your last advice to us? How do you become your own migraine leader, and how do
Yeah.
you stop suffering? I think we talked about it a lot already, but I'm looking for your final advice.
So for me, it felt like I was on a three beads on a string in a way. I used to be what I call a healthcare loser. I didn't understand anything about my condition or my situation or my options. I then shuffled along to the next bead, which I call healthcare learner. And I learned as much as I can about myself, my triggers, my condition, my options for medication, how I might improve my lifestyle. And then slowly you can move to the next speed, which is this idea of being a healthcare leader. And that doesn't mean necessarily like the blog or the studio that you're leading hundreds of people. It's just you. You want to lead
Mm-hmm.
yourself. You want to be your own healthcare provider, and you want to know what works for you so that you can advocate for yourself. When you go to jobs or when you go to the doctors, you can say, no, this is not going to work for me, or can we do this instead? But it won't happen like that. It's not a click of a finger. It's not overnight. But if you think of it as a line, go from loser, move yourself to learner. The more you learn, eventually you'll become a healthcare leader. It's possible. It just takes time and it takes effort, but it's not as bad as it sounds. The more you do it, the quicker it happens. It's kind of exciting because it becomes really empowering, and you stop becoming a victim, and you are now just
Yeah.
leading the best life you can because you understand yourself so much better.
Yeah, I really like what you say, going from loser to learner. And that's kind of similar to the Dutch saying, or at least the saying we have at Stadio Migraine, going from migraine lijder to
Yep.
migraine leider. And it's a
Yeah.
small difference, but it's like what you
But
say.
epic.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's you. And
yeah,
that's what I think everyone can go for. If you can just make one small change tomorrow, so whether it's cut back a little bit on your coffee or walk outdoors in the sunshine, find some small thing that you can make a difference. Then the next day, do a little bit more. Then the next day, do a little bit more. You'll be surprised how each of those little tiny things start to add up. And
yeah.
so, yeah, small changes, big outcomes. It's worth it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Linda, for taking the time to talk with
Yeah.
us about all your experiences and for being so open. I really appreciate it. And I also have some other great news to the Stadio Migraine followers, because you will start a guest blog at Stadio Migraine so that you can also
Yay.
share your experiences with the Stadio Migraine followers. And of course, everyone can directly go to your website, but we decided that it's also nice to have this Stadio Migraine and the Mindful Migraine blogger collaboration, right? And
Yeah, love it.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to talk more to you, to share more experiences, and also to have the Stadio Migraine followers benefit from all your great advice and your experiences. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome, and I really appreciate it, because I really believe the more voices that are out there, the more people can hear, the more they can learn, the better they'll feel. So yeah, super excited.
Thank you so much. So this is the end of our podcast, and I would like to ask everyone, if you liked our podcast, please go to Spotify, become a follower, or go to LinkedIn or on other social media channels, because that would really help us and you can really support us. You can also visit Linda's website. Linda, your website.
So it's called the mindfulmigraine.blog.
Yes. So go to Linda's blog and subscribe there, and you know where to find us. Thank you so much for listening.